Hey guys, welcome to the AFL Round 13 betting trend report preview for the upcoming round. We're already into the second half of the AFL season now, and I post this video every single week going through all the games, what the odds are for that specific game, what the odds are, what the odds were for their previous matchups, and any betting trends for that individual matchup. And then once we go through each game, we'll go through what I'm considering betting on for that game. So we have a total of 8 games coming up this weekend. It's going to run through all those games. But before we get into this weekend's matchups, we'll quickly recap the betting trends and what happened last weekend. So just the 7 matches in round number 12. Of the 7 games, 5 of them went over the total points line. The only 2 games that went under were the Eagles-St Kilda game and the Geelong-Richmond game. Every other game went over. Away teams covered 5 of the 7 matches and won 4 of the 7. If we look at the betting trend so far this season, still very, very even between home and away sides. Of the 106 games, home teams have covered 52. So away sides have a slight winning record, and favorites and underdogs very, very even. Last weekend, favorites covered 4 of the 7 games and won 5 of the 7. The only favorite who won but didn't cover was Geelong against Richmond. 2 underdogs won their games outright. Firstly, Carlton against Port Adelaide, and then Fremantle with their big win over Melbourne. Also, for the betting totals this year, we look at the same data. Here, what we're looking at here is the betting against the spread betting. We can see the Swans have the best overall record, covering 9 of their 11 games, 5-0 at home this season. Most teams all around the 6-6 mark, 5-7 or 7-5. North Melbourne, the other team with a really poor record. And obviously, you can then break it down when they're a small favorite, small underdog, and so on, and look for the trends there. And I have all this data going back to 2014. And then from the totals perspective, slightly into the under so far this season, 54 to 52. Night games going under at a slight rate, day games going over at a slight rate. Then you can break it down by each team. Richmond, 8 of their 12 games have gone under, same as Essendon and Fremantle. And then from the over side, the Western Bulldogs have been the biggest overs team this season with 9 of their 12 games going over the total and 6 of 8 as a favorite. Looking at this weekend's games, though, we start with Adelaide versus Richmond. Richmond have definitely been a lot better their past 2 weeks than they were for the few months prior to that. They face a tricky game here against Crows over in Adelaide. Adelaide will be keen to bounce back after their loss last week. Prior to that, they were very, very good, winning by a big margin against West Coast at home. From a betting perspective, it's a very tricky game. I feel like the line, like this weekend, the lines and the totals are very, very close to what I was expecting them to be. So I'm going to have to be really clever with my bets, hoping to keep the run going that we've been going on the past week or so with the sports, winning 16 of our past 18 bets. Good weekend last weekend in sports, and then been running really well in the MLB and NHL. But with this game, I'm probably looking at disposal markets as my main bets, with Richmond giving up a high number of disposals to the opposition. Expect Adelaide to win this game. They likely won't take it lightly with Richmond winning the matchup at the beginning of last season, and Richmond have won and covered 3 of the past 4. But Adelaide should be too good. They're only $1.12 on the head-to-head market, so no real value there. But there'll definitely be a few players that come out. Once lineups are out, they will be attacking on their player props for that game. And to do that, I use the disposal betting trend sheets, which I've spoken about in a previous video. So just definitely check out the channel if you want to see more about that. The total at 168.5, I am interested in the over here. The previous matchups we've seen 175, 180 at this venue. So down to 168, definitely that number does look a touch low. So slightly interested in the over. Western Bulldogs against the Brisbane Lions. Bulldogs are nice winners last week. Brisbane coming off the bye. I think the Bulldogs get this done down in Melbourne. They've won and covered 3 of the past 4 versus the Lions, and the home team has covered 4 of the past 5 and won 18 of the past 22. So that sets up really well for the Bulldogs. They're playing good form. Both sides fairly even defensively, but Bulldogs clearly the better attacking side. So I think they get this job done. Minus 10.5. As I said, I feel like the lines are fairly accurate this week, but would lean towards Bulldogs to cover the 10.5. Total at 171.5. No super lean on that total. 3 of the past 4 between these two sides have gone under. It's a couple of points lower than it was in their previous matchups, which were mid 170s. If you go back prior to these 4 matches, 8 of the 10 prior to that all went over. So their recent games have been going under, but prior and overall, this matchup has a tendency to go over the total points line. Last time they met in round 3 last season, the Lions were 9.5-point favorites, but Bulldogs won that game by 14 points. The line has swung around fairly considerably, but Lions really not having the best season, especially on the road. Hawthorn against the Giants. If this game was played a month ago, this line would probably be around the minus 40 mark for GWS, but it's only at minus 7.5. Largely due to both teams' forms going in opposite directions. GWS, their first 2 months of the season was really, really good, and then have dropped off the past few weeks. Hawthorn, their first 2 months was really, really poor, and then the last month or so has been significantly better. Statistically wise, overall on the season, GWS should win this game, and they have won 4 of the past 5 against Hawthorn. However, if you just look into the past month, Hawthorn are a big chance of winning this game, especially with it being played down in Tasmania. So as it currently stands, leaning towards the Hawks at the plus 7.5. The home team has performed really well in this matchup, winning 11 of the past 13, plus a draw in there as well. And Hawthorn have covered 3 of the past 4 against the Giants. So feel like with their momentum and their confidence up, this is a game they're capable of stealing, and do like them with those few extra points. West Coast versus North Melbourne. West Coast 20.5-point favorites at home here. So back-to-back weeks, the Eagles have come up favorites. North Melbourne still yet to get a win on the board this season. This is probably close to their best opportunity. Otherwise, they're realistically looking to about round 20, where they play West Coast and Richmond at home. So if they want to get a win on the board, this is their probably best chance for the next couple of months as well. West Coast have been a lot better at home than they have been away from home. They lost last week to St Kilda, but North come off the bye here. So they are well rested, and they have won 3 of the past 4 versus the Eagles. This is a game where I feel like I just can't get involved from a betting perspective. If you've watched any of my videos previously, you'll know that I like betting in games where we've got averaged better teams, because I feel like they're just a lot more consistent and predictable, where the lower ranked sides can have really good games one week, really bad games the following week. And, that makes it tricky from a betting perspective. So these kind of games, 2 lowly ranked sides, for the most part, generally stay out of. But as I said, the motivation has to be there for North Melbourne to give themselves a chance of winning this game, especially off the bye. And they do have that good record. For the past 5 have all gone under the total, but we see it's set at 156.5, so a lot lower than their past 3 matchups. St Kilda take on the Gold Coast. Another tricky game from a betting perspective. I like the Gold Coast to win if I'm choosing a side here. They've been the better side overall this season. The question, though, is can they replicate their home form and their Darwin form down in Melbourne? If they can do that, they win this game and win it well. But the question you need to ask yourselves is, can they do that? St Kilda have won and covered 3 of the past 4 against them. But Gold Coast were a dominant winner here on the Gold Coast late last season. Probably my bet for this game I will take the Gold Coast Suns at minus 2.5. I think they're playing well enough to win this game. But just there's always kind of been an issue with Queensland teams playing down in Melbourne. But St Kilda coming back from Perth last week, not really an ideal situation for them. It's not like they've been just playing in Melbourne the past few weeks, and they haven't really been playing that well either. So I do like the Gold Coast to get it done. Interestingly, 8 of the past 10 between these two sides have gone under. We're getting 163.5 for this game. My total is 162.5. So I'm personally going to stay away from that total, but do like the Suns there on the road. Sydney versus Geelong. The Swans are 18.5 point favorites coming off their bye. They're playing in really, really good form, pretty much unbeatable at home this season. Their last 3 games, Geelong have won 2, and the last game ended in a draw here last season, a very low scoring one, 54 points all. The home teams covered the past 6 in this matchup, so that favors the Swans. Sydney have covered 4 of the past 6 against the Cats. I like the Swans to win this game. Not convinced on taking a minus 18.5 point line, so not completely sure how I'm going to play this game just yet. But I'm confident the Swans get the win. So may look at some sort of a same game multi with the Swans to win into some other legs for this game. I just don't think the Cats are playing well enough to go into Sydney and win this game. So especially with Sydney coming off their bye. The other angle I do like in this game is the over 172.5. Firstly, 5 of the past 7 between these two sides have gone over. Last time they met at the SCG, we got 170.5 lines. It's only 2 points higher. But this is the one game where I feel like the line or the total is a fair way out. I have this number over 180 points. So I do think it is slightly low. There is rain predicted from Wednesday through to Saturday in Sydney, which means it shouldn't affect this game on Sunday, but whether that rain kind of extends over into Sunday. But we have a day game, fine conditions expected. I think this game can go over, but definitely more confident in playing a side here with the Swans, especially looking at them from the second quarter onwards as well. So potentially could look at a live play in this game as well if you want to get a little bit more tricky with it. But Swans and lean towards the over. Essendon versus Carlton. 6 of the past 8 between these two sides have gone under the total. We've got 171.5 as the number here. However, I do think that number has been adjusted for the recent trend between these two sides because I was expecting a slightly higher number, more so in the mid 170s. Essendon coming off the loss last week against the Suns, going back to Melbourne. Carlton coming off a big win against Port Adelaide. Carlton coming to this with the extended rest, having played the Thursday game, whereas Essendon played on the Sunday. So do really like Carlton in this matchup, and we'll be happy taking the minus 9.5 points. The away team, even though they're both Melbourne sides, has won and covered the past 4. And Carlton have won and covered 3 of the past 4 against the Bombers. So Carlton clearly the better side. I feel like Essendon's kind of slipped a little bit the past few weeks. They had a really good run during about rounds 4 to rounds 8, and then the past couple of weeks have definitely slipped off a little bit. So do like Carlton to win and cover the minus 9.5. Then Collingwood versus Melbourne. This is the Monday game. Melbourne are currently small favorites, only half a point, but the game is pretty much a pick 'em. Collingwood have won 4 of the past 5 versus Melbourne. Majority of those as an underdog, though, except the most recent matchup. If you go back to 2022, they won as $3.35, $3, $4.80. And then last season in the finals, won as a $1.35 favorite. They do have a really good record. The underdog has covered the spread in the past 6 in this matchup. Collingwood are currently underdogs, but I would be surprised if it stays that way. I do expect Collingwood to be backed in for this game. Don't think there's a ton between these two sides. I'm surprised the market hasn't got Collingwood as favorite. So I'm definitely happy taking them as the underdog. They drew a couple of weeks ago against Fremantle in a game where, they probably should have won that game realistically. And then last week, they lost by 18 points to the Western Bulldogs, who are playing in really, really good form. So I like Collingwood to get it done in the Monday game. So to quickly recap all the ways I'm looking at betting the games this weekend. The Adelaide-Richmond game, slightly lean towards the overs, 168.5, and do like the Crows to win and potentially some props in that game. Like the Bulldogs to beat the Lions. Hawthorn with the plus 7.5 against GWS. Likely staying out of the West Coast North Melbourne game. like the Suns to beat St Kilda, Sydney to beat Geelong, and potentially a play on the line or some sort of prop play alongside the Swans there on the money line, and interested in the over 172.5, just monitoring weather. Like Carlton -9.5 against the Bombers, and then Collingwood as the underdog against Melbourne. That's most likely how I'm looking at playing this round. You get all my bets with the bet finders that I post every single day. All the plays go up for the following day by 8 p.m. So it's super easy for you guys to follow along. I'll put the link in the description. Not only do you get all my bets and everything I'm betting and why I'm betting them, but also you get access to all the bet finders for the AFL. So it's over 20 different tools that I use for the AFL when analyzing games, because I don't just, go off, my gut feeling or what I remember about these sides. A lot of my decisions with the bets that I'm putting on are made based off statistics. So I'm using tools like what you see here with the matchups between both sides, looking at their main statistics and key performance indicators, and use that alongside the player trends, fantasy points, and all the other information, key ins and outs that I use, plus obviously the betting data that we looked at the beginning of this video, how teams are performing, which teams get backed in, which teams drift, all that information. So if you want to use this to start making money betting on the AFL, definitely check out the bet finders. It's going to definitely help you in the second half of the season, because the more data we have on these sides based on how many games they've played is why that, as this mid part and late part of the season, we're able to win way more bets because we have this information on the side. So definitely check it out. If you want more videos like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel. You have notifications on so you don't miss any videos for the rest of the season.